Hello and welcome to the CAPE training program. My name is John Leatherman. CAPE is short for Community Assessment and Education to Promote Behavioral Health Planning and Evaluation. This training and related activities was sponsored by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the USDA network of regional rural development centers. The objectives of the program are to enhance behavioral health literacy by offering the Mental Health First Aid Workshop with an emphasis on substance abuse. Our second objective is to motivate the creation of community coalitions to address local behavioral health needs, such as those related to the opioid epidemic. Finally, we are encouraging the notion of formal action planning to create a community roadmap for improving the local situation. In this video, we're going to begin a discussion of community action planning. We'll start by talking about how to sustain community-scale initiatives over the long term. That will lead into a discussion of community strategic action planning. For any of you that have worked with broad-based community initiatives, you recognize the challenge of sustaining the effort over time. You may have been able to get people together and excited about some initiative. You may have been able to put together a great introduction and generated a lot of enthusiasm for getting things done. But what often happens is that even with the best of intentions, people tend to get bogged down and flounder over what the next steps to take. They may meet a few times, maybe they start something, maybe they make a little progress. Soon they seem to go in circles and people start to miss meetings and drift away. After a couple of months, nothing is happening and we're back where we started. The whole effort amounted to little or nothing. I've been in that position many times and found myself wondering whether I'm doing any good at all. Thinking about this and what can be done to increase the probability of sustained effort, I concluded that the best way is to create an action plan. It starts right at the beginning. If I'm leading a community program where the intent is that there be follow-up activity after the conclusion of the formal program, I don't finish until people have made specific commitments for action. Sometimes developing an action plan is part of the formal program. At a minimum, I'll ask for volunteers who will commit to leading any follow-up effort, and I'll get people to agree to make specific plans for meeting and continue discussion. A day, a time, a place, within 2 weeks. So what should people think about accomplishing within a specific time frame? If they have already settled on some goal, in the near term they need to think about who needs to be involved and recruit them. They should try as much as possible to make it easy to participate by having regular meetings at a convenient place and time. Perhaps it's a breakfast meeting or a luncheon meeting, or from 4 to 5 p.m. at the end of the business day. I suggest trying to establish a regular schedule and meeting location. I suggest people start talking about what they are trying to do with local officials and invite their participation. In the intermediate term, I encourage community groups to try to create an institutional culture where designated people take formal responsibility for getting things done. I encourage creating a formal agenda, recording participation, and taking notes. I encourage them to think small to begin and set discrete and achievable goals. The objective within the first year of activity is to engineer some successes. They don't have to be major accomplishments, but people need to feel like they are accomplishing something. The objective is to build a mindset that things are happening and things are getting done. Have people report on their thinking and progress. Invite others from outside to report on anything they are doing that may be relevant. In the longer term, I suggest making a report to local governing bodies that may have interest. They can have a formal open community event where they invite external partners to hear of efforts and progress. They should try to communicate with the broader community and describe the issues they are dealing with, their efforts to improve the situation, and any progress or successes they have. I encourage groups to celebrate their successes, to share credit as broadly as possible, and to congratulate everyone for their efforts. Let's talk about what kinds of things are feasible to accomplish in a given time frame and how we know whether we are making progress. It all starts with articulating what needs to change and establishing a long-term goal. Thinking about that goal a little further, the question is, how will you know that the situation has changed for the positive? I encourage setting realistic goals. For example, we'll never eliminate addictive behavior, but we may be able to prevent problems from worsening and perhaps improve somewhat. To effect the desired change, we need to articulate the sequential priorities necessary to accomplish the goal. So what sort of progress should we expect over time? In the short term, appropriate goals might focus on such things as enhancing awareness, increasing knowledge, influencing attitudes, and perhaps some skills training in dealing with some issue. In the intermediate term, there is sufficient time to see observable changes in people's behaviors and actions. We might hope to influence people's decisions or establish some policies. In the long term, we think in terms of the ultimate impact we hope to accomplish. We think about how we would like to see the social, behavioral, economic, and environmental situation to have changed. Using all of the information and tools we've discussed, we're in a position to create a community action plan. I've offered two possibilities for what you might hope to accomplish through your participation in the CAPE training program. I've suggested that effective community action begins through the establishment of a community coalition to address difficult challenges. It may be broader behavioral health issues or efforts to combat the opioid crisis. If you already have such a coalition in place, you may want to achieve some other objective in relation to specific challenges or in relation to groups with whom you work. Once again, I'll draw your attention to our CAPE Community Action Planning Worksheet. It walks you through the community strategic action planning process step by step. I shared with you an action plan for establishing and sustaining a community coalition to address behavioral health concerns. If you need such a coalition to deal with behavioral health concerns or those specific to the opioid crisis, you can use this as a template for doing the same thing in your community. In the final video, I'll share another action plan that I wrote for dealing with the opioid issue. Now, as an example of pulling things together, I'll share some work I did a few years ago. If you look at this website, you'll see everything I've been talking about through the entire video series. It was to help hospitals create community health needs assessments. I think it was around 2011 when Congress passed the Federal Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. That law required certain hospitals to conduct a community health needs assessment and to formulate specific actions they would take in addressing community health priorities. Hospitals in many rural communities struggled with how to conduct a community health assessment. I tried to help them, and I worked in 25 or 30 communities over a period of time. This is an example of a community health needs assessment for one rural community. You can substitute any word for health and the process remains the same. Everything I've talked about was accomplished in 3 two-hour meetings. All of the tools and techniques I've talked about are illustrated here. These are the community's overarching health-related priorities boiled down to 3, but nothing was lost. Every idea that was discussed is represented, so there's a place for everyone to contribute. Here is their community action plan. I made the audience go through exactly the same planning exercise that I am asking of you, and we did this right there within our program. I'd guess not a single person participating in the program had ever done anything like formal community action planning previously, but they did it, and they did a good job. And if they can get through this, I think anyone watching this video series can do it too. We have one more video addressing community action planning to deal with the opioid crisis. Then we'll have a webinar to discuss anything you would like in relation to community development. We'll also discuss community action planning and the plans we are hoping you will create. Then in our final webinar, it's your turn to present. We hope that you will be ready to give a brief report on your action plan or the progress you are making. We can all offer helpful ideas and suggestions for what you are trying to do. Contact me with any questions, and thank you for watching.